Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to talk about how I bought my first house at 25 years old, the steps I did in order to buy it, and how you can do it too. The first step was going to school, graduating, getting a high-paying job that was stable, with stable income. That is the first step in order to buy a house. Without a good paying job that you know is stable, that you're going to have long-term, it's not possible to have the stability that the banks want and that you want in order to buy a house. I personally went to school to become a pharmacist. After graduating, I was able to land a good paying job that I know it was going to be stable and I'm going to have for years to come. And that is the first step to qualifying for that house, is having a good income. Now, I did rack up some student loans in the process, but it was well worth it, and I have no regrets in regards to the money I had to take out in order to go to school, because I know with my job I can pay those loans back without a problem. All right, now here is the fun step, is setting a budget. And on this step, you really want to be realistic with yourself. You know, crunch the numbers, see what you can actually afford, and you have to do some self-reflection and actually, you know, make sure that you're setting a budget for something that you're going to be able to comfortably pay for over the long term, because banks more than likely are going to approve you for much more than you can comfortably afford. So that's up to you to say, hey, I'm going to set the monthly mortgage at this much, and that way I'm not tight on my other expenses, my monthly expenses, and you have money left for all your other living expenses and not just all your money going to your mortgage. And then you'll be what's called house poor, where you put so much money into your house that you have no money left for all your other living expenses. You don't want that. If you're going to be taking out a mortgage, which most people are, meaning you're not going to be buying a house outright in cash, because who has a bunch of cash lying around to pay for a house outright? Not the most majority of people are going to be able to do that. So if you're going to be getting a mortgage, one of the tools that banks use to analyze how much money they are able to lend you is your debt to income ratio. And basically that's just, they look at how much your expenses are and they look at how much you make, and then they calculate the ratio of how much debt you have to how much income you make. So that is how they basically look and see how much you are able to afford, or how much house you're able to get for what you make. Now, it's really funny because, you know, there's a whole bunch of HGTV memes where, you know, you have the couple that the guy is, you know, he grows cilantro in his backyard, and the wife makes arts and crafts for kids and sells it at a farmer's market, and their budget's $4 million. So you want to be realistic. You know, the bank's probably gonna approve you for more than you can afford. But again, be realistic with yourself. How much do you really want to be shelling out every month for a mortgage? That's what you want to really ask yourself. Now, by the end of this video, I'm gonna give you some bonus tips on how to accelerate your savings and get to that goal of saving your down payment for a house even sooner. So make sure to stay tuned to the end of the video for that bonus tip. Another thing I wanted to mention is to make sure you use your after-tax income to calculate how much house you can afford, because a lot of banks will use your gross income and not your net income, which is your take-home pay after all of your taxes, retirement contributions, all of that is taken out. That's what you want to use, your net income, because that's actually the money that you're going to be seeing. You're not going to be seeing your gross income, because, you know, Uncle Sam has to stick his hand in your pocket and take his share. So make sure to use your net income, which is your income after all of your deductions, or, you know, taxes and all that stuff. Make sure to use that income for your calculations. All right, the next thing that I focused on when looking for a house was my credit score. So your credit score is basically what shows the banks that you are a responsible person that they can lend money to, and that you're going to be paying that money back to them, and you're not just going to leave them hanging dry. Typically, a high credit score, or I guess if you're credit worthy would be typically over 700, but you definitely want to be in the upper 700s, if not the 800s, to get the best rates, because your credit score can influence your interest rate on your mortgage. Now, the range for credit scores goes from all the way from 300 all the way up to 850. And again, anything over about 700, you're considered to be having a good credit score. Anything above 800, that's where you're the cream of the crop. That's where you're gonna get the best interest rates, because you're gonna be seen as a credible source to lend money to. So you can pull up your credit report, and your credit report basically has your history of what it is that you're doing with your credit. And that is a good source to see if you're in good standing, or if there's any sort of issues with your credit report, then you want to get those straightened out before you look into buying a house. But one thing that I found super useful, and a lot of people use this, it's a really good tool, is Credit Karma. And Credit Karma is a website and an application that you can put in all your information, and it'll basically look up your credit score, and it'll tell you everything about your credit history on the website or app, whatever you are comfortable using. I check my Credit Karma almost on a daily basis or every few days, because it fluctuates depending on how much you have on your balances, on your debts, or whether you pay off your credit cards or you have any outstanding balances, medical debt, anything like that. It's going to show up on your Credit Karma. So it's something that you definitely want to keep an eye on, and make sure that if there's any issues with any of your accounts, that you get it straightened out before you go ahead and apply for a loan on a house. So there's actually a really cool feature on the Credit Karma app or on the website that you can use, and it details the credit factors, which is basically what sums up to make your credit score. And basically there's a few factors that go into making up your credit score. The first one is payment history. Basically, are you making all of your payments on time? Do you have any missed payments or delayed payments? That's gonna bring your score down. If you have 100% or you make all your payments on time, then you're gonna be in good standing. And that has a really high impact on your credit score. The next one is credit card utilization. Basically, they take a ratio of what credit limit you have and how much of that credit limit you're actually using, and that'll determine your credit card utilization rate, and that has a really high impact. You typically don't want to have a utilization rate of over 30%. That's considered high, so definitely you want to stick to at least below, I would probably recommend 10 to 15% of your credit limit. So don't use your cards if you can't pay them back, and if you're going to use them, then pay them off every month. That way your credit card utilization isn't affected, which in turn decreases your credit score. The next thing that has a high impact on your credit is your derogatory marks. Derogatory marks are basically anything like delinquent payments or anything that you have in collections that you haven't paid for, whether that be car payments, medical bills, anything that you are late on or haven't paid. That's going to be basically a derogatory mark. So you don't want those, and they can actually stay on your report for 7 to 10 years. So it's going to follow you for a long time. It's going to show that you're an irresponsible borrower. So banks are going to look into it, and they're going to question whether they should lend you money or not if you have any derogatory marks on your credit score. So you don't want any of those. And if you have them, then get them straightened out as soon as you possibly can. That way they don't affect you in the future. The next thing that you want to look at on your credit health is the age of credit history. And that doesn't have as high of an impact on your credit score, but it's still pretty important. It's basically how much time you've had credit for. So if you're a new borrower and you haven't had a history of being a responsible borrower, then banks don't know whether they are going to be able to lend to you or not, because they don't know if you're a responsible borrower or not. If you have a credit card that's been open for 10 years and you use it responsibly, and you have a history of paying it back, then banks like to see that, and they're more willing to lend you money if you have a responsible history of using credit. The next thing that has a low impact on your credit is your total accounts. So basically what that means is how many accounts you have open that you're currently using credit on. And that could be anything from student loans, it could be car loans, it could be house loans, it could be credit cards, anything at all that you take out a line of credit for is going to go on this. And typically you want to have a variety of accounts because that's going to show that you are a responsible borrower in multiple areas. So the last final thing that can affect your credit score is your hard inquiries. And the hard inquiries are basically how many credit applications have you had for new lines of credit. So anything that has a new line of credit that's being opened up, any new credit card, any new loan application, anything like that is going to count as a hard inquiry. And each one of those is going to count against your credit, and it can stay on your report for up to 2 years. So that can lower your credit score, and you don't want to have too many of these because then it's going to show that you're an irresponsible borrower or you're applying for too many loans at the same time. All right, so now that we've talked a little bit about credit, we want to go into how we go about saving this massive amount of money that you need in order to put a down payment to buy a house. Well, it's very simple. So all you have to do is save, save, save. Well, yeah, it's simple, but it's not easy. So in order to save for a down payment for a house, you want to make this your priority number one. If you want to take a vacation, then go ahead, take a vacation, but that just shows that your priority is not saving for a house. If you are making something your number one priority, then you have to have that in your mind at all times and be able to focus and sacrifice and save that money until you get to your goal for that down payment. So that is what my wife and I did when we bought our first house, and it paid off because now we have our down payment, we were able to put it down, we bought our house, and now we were able to move in and everything is good. So if you make saving your down payment for a house your number one priority, then how are you gonna do it? Well, get creative with it. Find ways to cut costs out of your budget. If it means sacrificing and eating out less and then maybe cooking more at home and eating more homemade meals, then guess what? Sacrifice and do it. Maybe you also have to find alternate ways of having fun, of entertainment. Instead of maybe going to a club and paying for bottle service, maybe you stay home and get some alcohol from your local liquor store that costs a fraction of the price. You can also find low or free entertainment in a couple of different areas. Maybe you're into nature and you can go on hikes for fun, and hikes are completely free other than whatever gas it takes to get to that location. Maybe you can go to the beach. The beach is free. Go to a park. There's many different ways that you can find to cut costs and still have fun. You just got to get a little creative with it. And again, it comes down to what are your priorities. If your priority is saving for that house, then make that a priority number one, and then get creative, and you can still enjoy life and have that down payment saved. So the next question is, if you're saving money to buy your house, then where do you save that money? Well, to be honest with you, I kept it in just a checking account, and because we were able to save up our down payment for our first house pretty quickly, so we really didn't need to put it anywhere. But basically, you want to look at it this way. If you keep it in cash or in a checking account, it's never growing. You're always gonna have it lose value because of inflation. So if you're keeping it short term, then checking account or maybe a savings account or in cash is fine. If you're keeping it in cash, don't keep it under your mattress or anything, because if you get it stolen, then it's never a great idea to have a lot of money in cash. unless you have a safe, but even then those can get broken into. So yeah, keep your money at a bank. It's probably safer that way. Another option to where you can keep your money is in the stock market. So this is kind of risky because if you're using the money in the short term, you never want to bet on the stock market going up in the short term if you're going to need to take that money out, because it may just be that the money that you put in, when it goes time for you to take it out when you need it, it might be that the stock has gone down and you're going to end up losing money. So you're going to have to save up more money because of the money you lost in the first place. So it depends on your risk levels, but if you're going to be using it short term, I wouldn't recommend putting the money into the stock market, because again, you could end up with less money than whatever you put in. Now, a good middle option between just keeping it in cash and getting risky and investing it in the stock market is putting it into a high yield savings account. Now, there's a couple of banks that have high yield savings account, probably somewhere up to the range of like 2%, maybe up to 3%, depending on how the market's doing. But these are good accounts to put your money into because they are safer than the stock market, but they're also not going to be zero like keeping your money in a checking account. So it's actually going to be able to grow a little bit while you're saving up the rest of the money for your down payment. So that's a good place to put it in if you're going to be, taking a little bit longer to save the money. But to be honest, I just kept mine in a checking account because I was able to save up the money pretty quickly, and I didn't want to just be moving the money around different accounts, and then things will get complicated when the banks ask you for your banking statements or your accounts to see how much money you have. Now here's a clip of NerdWallet. This is their 9 best high yield online savings account of June 2020. So you can check those out, and the percentages or how much they pay is in the range of 1 to 2%. So these might be some good options to go with, and just check them out and see which one works for you if you want to keep it in one of these accounts. But again, you could always just keep it in a checking account. You will lose a little bit of money to inflation, but if you're going to be using it in the short term, then it might just be worth it to simplify things and keep it in a checking account. Now, the next thing is, how much money do you really need to save in order to buy a house? So this question is really personal, and it really just depends on how comfortable you are with debt. So it can range anywhere from 3.5% all the way up to, paying in cash 100% of the house. But typically you see anywhere from 3.5% of a down payment on a house to 20 to 30%. If you pay 20% down on a house, you don't have to pay what's called PMI, and PMI basically is a mortgage insurance that the bank puts on your house, and you have to pay this mortgage insurance personally. It doesn't go towards anything. It doesn't go towards you owning the house. It is basically just an insurance to make sure that if the bank has to foreclose on your house, that they get their money back, and it's just an extra payment that doesn't go towards anything. If you don't want it, then you have to put down at least 20% on a house. Now, there are some options where you can put very little money down, like 3.5%, and that's actually what I ended up doing, is putting just 3.5% down, because it was gonna take so much more time for me to get 20% of the house I bought than to just put 3.5% down, and then if I wanted to, I can put more towards the principal. And once you actually get to the 20% of equity in the house, the PMI or mortgage insurance actually comes off. So you're gonna be saving money once you reach that 20%. But I didn't wanna wait to save 20% on a house, and it was probably gonna take me over a year or more to save 20% of a house to then go ahead and start looking for houses. So 3.5% is all I had to put down. And again, credit influences everything. So if you have really good credit, then you can get a really good interest rate, and maybe the mortgage insurance isn't such a huge deal if you get a really good interest rate, and then again, that mortgage insurance, depending on what kind of loan you get, will come off. So there's usually two types of loans. There's a conventional and then there's FHA. The conventional, the mortgage insurance is gonna drop off of the loan as soon as you get to that 20% equity in the house. FHA loan, the loan stays with the PMI for the life of the loan. So you would actually have to refinance in order to take the mortgage insurance off of the loan. So there's pros and cons to each. You know, ask your lender and talk to them about the options that they have. But again, it all comes down to credit worthiness. And if you have really good credit, then I'm sure there's banks that are gonna be willing to work with you and give you a really good deal because they know that you're a stable person that has good income that they'll be able to lend to. So make sure to talk to your lenders and see what options are available, because there's always options available. So definitely talk to them. This is especially true for first-time homeowners. So first-time home buyers get really good discounts and really good deals. So that is one thing that you definitely, if it's your first home that you're buying, talk to your lender because they might have a really good deal if it's your first time buying a home. All right, so another thing that I wanted to touch on is cash reserves. So this is basically money that you want to have set aside from your down payment in order to cover any unexpected expenses or repairs that you have to do. So I had a few $1,000s in reserves when I bought my first house because I did not know what I was gonna run into, or you know, things always come up, especially if you're not buying a brand new house that was just built. Things are gonna break, there's things that are gonna go wrong, and you wanna make sure to have some reserves saved up so that way you're not, you know, frantically looking on how to figure out where you're gonna get the money to pay for these unexpected expenses. So for example, a water heater. So when I bought my house, the water heater was the original water heater from 20 years ago. And it was, you know, it was in good condition, it was working, but you know, it was gonna have problems extremely soon. So my insurance actually told me, hey, you have to change your water heater because I guess it's a liability that the water heater is that old. And if it bursts and does any damage, insurance doesn't want to have to pay for that. So they're like, hey, you need to, you know, show us proof that you're changing your water heater, because if not, we're going to drop you off the insurance. So that's something that you definitely want to have saved up, because my water heater, to have it replaced and installed, was like $800. So you want to have some money to have a cushion for these unexpected expenses. And there's always going to be unexpected expenses with a house, whether big or small, but definitely have some sort of cushion. That way you're not scrambling looking for the money to pay for that new water heater, and if not, then your insurance is going to drop you off. All right, everyone, so for the bonus tip, this is something that I did, and it's, you know, it's not for everyone, but definitely this is an option. What I did, if you are really set on buying a house and make that your priority, then stop payments on everything else. If you're having a car that you're paying down and you're putting extra towards the car, then stop putting extra on paying off the car and make the down payment for your house a priority. So I was fortunate enough to have my car paid off when I started saving up for a house, but you know, that's an option, is stop putting any extra towards any other debt and focus on your number one priority. Same thing with student loans. So I actually had my student loans in deferral. So I wasn't paying anything on my student loans when I was saving up for a house. Why? Because saving up for a house was my number one priority at the time. So if that's your number one priority, you know, it might not be the right option for everyone, but again, I put my student loans on deferral. I stopped paying them. That way I can focus on my number one priority, which was saving for a house payment. So again, you know, if that's your priority, focus on that and get that money saved up. Once you get it saved up, then you can continue paying off the rest of the things or whatever your other priorities are. But again, focus on what you really want and make it happen. So if you guys are interested in buying a house, let me know in the comments below. I want to know what your guys' budgets are, and how much you already have saved for a down payment. This might inspire some people and, you know, show them that anything is possible if they really set their minds to it. So let me know how much you saved up or have saved up for your house down payment in the comments below, and that way we can inspire other people and help them reach their goals of buying a new house. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe below for more content, and let me know in the comments below what you think of the video, how much you saved up for your down payment, and if maybe buying a house isn't even an option for you, or whether you don't think it's worth it. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.